Hi, I'm Willem Marks. During the pandemic, the burden has fallen on leaders across organizations, but particularly CIOs, who've been called upon to deliver significant strategic value. For this conversation about the way that CIOs have been leveraging automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data to drive that innovation, I'm joined by Cynthia Stoddard, the Chief Information Officer at Adobe, and Andrew Wilson, the Chief Digital Officer at Microsoft. Thanks to you both for joining us.
Hello.
Hi, great to be here.
To start us off, let me ask you both the same question, starting with you, Cynthia. How would you describe your company's priorities during the pandemic when it came to pushing forward innovation?
Oh, wow, that's a great question, looking back. I would say that the first priority was really around our employees and making sure that our organization could continue to run and be productive, and that our employees felt good about what they were doing in the environments in their homes. With that said, making the employees productive or helping them to be productive, the next priority was really around customer experience. How do we prepare, and engage with our customers and actually help them through the pandemic? Many customers were not digital. We're a digital company, so there was a lot of lessons learned that we could offer, and also making our products, available to help areas such as, education. So I would say that the employees and the customers really fueled the innovation and the ideas that came flowing out of the organization. Just making sure that we were focused on operational excellence for the employees or operational excellence for our customers, making sure that our products were up and running, that they were accessible, available, that we shared how they could be used to help a digital world. And again, checking in with employees to make sure that they were doing well, because our employee success really drove our innovation and our customer success.
And how about you, Andrew? At Microsoft, what were the major areas of focus that drove innovation over the past couple of years?
As Cynthia says, there was an immediate need to reevaluate what right looked like. We'd all been working on our digital strategies and our transformations. We'd been getting to the cloud. Innovation, productivity, and experience were all mantra to us. And then the world changed, but we never knew how long it would change and to what extent it would change. We had to learn real time. So I think there was a real agility that our enterprise technology colleagues, Cynthia's team, my team, had to demonstrate. We had to really step up and reevaluate our role as the powerhouse of our companies. And we had to do it in a form and without a playbook, candidly. We were looking at situations where the nature of the way work was done was forced and changed. We had global workforces that had to react to that. We really were testing the effectiveness of the digital strategies we'd had for the last few years. I think what was proven is that the employees were more flexible than we could ever have imagined. There was a real demand and desire for flexible collaboration type capabilities, which needed to be accelerated. And we were doing it thinking about ourselves, but also about the broad customer base of the world that were relying on the products and services that both our organizations were running. I think we changed the nature of the relationship with both our employees and our customers. And that experience that Cynthia is describing, I think, was absolutely key. I think that many relationships went digital only. And certainly for the organization I was looking after, there was a high dependence on physical visiting, physical contact with customer, physically being in the office, and all of that changed. So what we really needed to do was to be agile enough to continue to be successful and to thrive, not simply to survive. We also had to make sure that we could mature and scale the services that we were running for the world. So there was a lot happening in parallel. And we relied on a lot of the technology decisions that we've taken collectively over the last few years.
So just to stick with some of this, things that people will have both heard about and others may have actively thought about during this difficult period include really that experience of employees. And for a lot of senior leaders, this, of course, became a massive focus, helping to accelerate digital transformation as it continued. Cynthia, what kind of programs, what kind of priorities at Adobe have already been having the greatest impacts, do you think, in the short term, and which are likely to have those kind of long-term impacts?
Yeah, so when I look at that, the different programs that we have, I think that one of the ones that we invested in, I mean, to Andrew's point, some of this is, initiatives we invested in the past, and they were tested here, is we created what we called an employee experience group within my organization. And we centralized all the technologies that touch the employees. That was actually huge. And I think that really paid off because what this group had done in the past is looked at different personas, looked at the personas of employees and how they work. Do they, to Andrew's point, are they always in a customer office, or are they engineers and need to work with tools in a certain way, or are they communicators and work with Wall Street and things like that? So we had these personas, we had geared some of the tools to these personas, but it went to the test. It absolutely went to the test to say, okay, now that the pandemic is here, can we bring these to life, and will this actually work when everybody is remote? So I would say that, looking backwards, that is really one of the initiatives that we have, one of the areas of focus, and it has paid off. And looking into the future, I would say that the same holds true, is how do we use more creative technologies to keep that experience up? How do we look at the workplace? How do we look at how people are working? How do we adapt, AI and ML to some of our work streams in order to make people more productive and take away some of the mundane activities? So a little bit on looking back and then looking forward.
Andrew, let me ask you, what were the aha moments, the kind of light bulb moments, if you will, in terms of the internal innovations at Microsoft during the last couple of years?
I think we had to develop and grow our culture and the mindset of work. So the aha for me was, this is both technology, but it's also work in practice, it's policy, it's the rules, it's the flexibility. We as a leadership team encouraged our employees to adapt and to adopt. So we wanted to make sure that we could protect clearly all of our employees and human safety. We wanted to give them flexibility. We wanted to demonstrate that it was okay to operate very differently. We wanted to make sure that the policies supported that, and then that the technology could as well with the scaling. So the value proposition, I think, changed in several dimensions at once. So it wasn't just a technology play, that was the aha. And I think also adaptability. When we started, I remember leaving the campus that I was working on thinking, well, it will be a few weeks, perhaps only a few days, I don't know. And that was over 2 years ago. So clearly that adaptability has had to continue. So I think really that the aha is, think about it in the round and come up with a complete value proposition that includes accelerated technology capability, but is complemented by other aspects that reinforce the new working culture.
Can I just get into the weeds on some of that? When we talk about flexibility and changing policies, give me some examples. What did you do?
Well, I mean, making it clear that it was okay to initially be not at work. It was okay to work flexible hours. Then it's okay to think about a return to work where you are part-time in one location, you can be remote, where the norm is a flexible hybrid working model where we're not going back fully and completely. Because I think as an employer, we have to demonstrate that flexibility. I think the new way of working is something that will be a base requirement of many of the career value propositions that our employees are looking for. So very specifically to accommodate very different styles, types, and paces and ways of working.
I'll come back to some of this in a bit more detail later, but what about at Adobe, Cynthia? Were there some pivotal moments where something suddenly clicked into focus for you, made you think differently about the way that you're thinking about the future of work, maybe?
Yes, I had many aha moments over the last 2 years. Many align with what Andrew was speaking about. It's all about the people, right, and the flexibility. I think one of the biggest aha moments for me was around actually the people. I was amazed right after the pandemic how people came together to help each other. It was a massive click over, for us to go totally remote. We had remote workers here and there. But when we went over, I think it was March 6th, and we clicked over, we had set up a Slack channel so that, people could help each other because we didn't actually know how people were going to operate without being able to, get to a physical help desk and things like that. And it was amazing. What we saw was productivity actually dropped a bit, and looking at knowledge base went way up. So people were studying, how to use different tools and things like that. And then knowledge base went down, and productivity went up higher than it was prior to the pandemic. And what we saw is people helping each other. Questions on the Slack channel, which our help desk was manning, people started answering. It became a community to help people, not only with work issues, but with how to balance your time, how to become, flexible, how to deal with dogs barking in the background, or, kids coming into meetings and things like that. It became a real family community. And then the other area that was a really aha moment was problem solving, and how people changed and operated to very quickly solve issues. So for example, we needed to bring interns. We bring, hundreds of interns on board in the summer, probably not to the scale that Microsoft does, but a lot of interns. And how do you get them equipment, when you're all locked down as a world? So my team created a desktop as a service, of course, using some of the Azure services, but they created this desktop as a service within probably less than a couple of months. And we were able to onboard our interns. So, just that creativity, and I have many other examples of that, but that creativity under pressure to say, how do we keep the company running? How do we come together as a community and help each other out with the ideas? I think was my greatest aha moment. And I guess the bottom line is really staying close to employees, because when you stay close and you talk about issues that you need to have solved, they step up in amazing ways.
I think the research and the telemetry was another aha for me, where we saw contradiction. Everybody wanted continued flexibility and still does. At the same time, everyone is missing being together, and marrying those two things together is interesting. And that the aha is there is something new and different here that has to be sustainably different. And I think that's going to be absolutely key for the future as well. The other thing I think, and as Cynthia talks about interns, I was reflecting alongside our interns, of course, we've been continuing to onboard new employees. And there are tens of thousands of employees who have never worked on a Microsoft campus. And so the identity of the company's workforce during the pandemic, and now is moving to hybrid, has changed completely. So we're not the same company, we're not the same constituent groups. We have to adapt to that and continue to adapt to that as technology leaders.
Yeah, and Andrew, that's a fantastic point about the employees, the new employees, how they're onboarded, how you assimilate them. Many employees have never met their boss in person. I mean, if you think about it, and that's quite different, right? You have this truly virtual, relationship. It's all digital, totally digital, through the interview all the way through to onboarding, and then becoming a member of a team that you've never met in person.
I think my final aha I would give you is the definition of success has changed through the pandemic. Initially, it was around productivity, as Cynthia was saying. And again, we were looking at our code developers and could we maintain services in that virtual working mode? Great. Yes, we did. But then the measure of success became, this sense of fatigue and how to combat that, this sense of reduced connectivity, this sense of missing community. So we weren't going to deal with all of that through normal conference calls, and we still reflect on that now, I think, because I think our employees are going to need it, and so that connectedness, that connective tissue that came from a more three-dimensional work experience is something that we're going to have to find ways to create and sustain without us all being fully back, as we keep saying. So for me, the final aha is, whilst it was an intervention, a moment, it's now a persistent reality that we're going to have to adapt to on a continued basis.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Andrew, we saw some very good things during the pandemic with people being able to speak up on virtual calls, and they probably would have never spoken up in a conference room because they were hidden. And some of that we don't want to lose, right? Because we've gained those voices, we've gained that creativity, that innovation, and we need to keep that alive in the new world that Andrew is talking about.
I'm struck by how both of you are talking so much about corporate culture, and I imagine, I don't know, but I'd imagine that the last couple of years have felt like your roles have changed to some extent. I want to ask you, Andrew, are you now thinking about your position as a digital leader differently?
Yes, I think so. I think, first of all, there's a sense with a lot of humility that we're actually powering the primary experience of both customers and employees, as we were saying. It may be the only experience that we have, that they have, of the organizations that we lead. So with that comes a lot of operational responsibility, but with that comes a lot of business success and continuity responsibility. We're not, quote unquote, just the technology provider. We are the fabric of the very business that we're actually running and representing. So I think I reflect on that. I also reflect that many CIOs and CDOs will now be looking at an increasing number of services which they're consuming but not creating themselves. So they're brokering them into their organization. That's the nature of the platform economy. That's the nature of a lot of the services which are being provided. So I think there's a changing nature of role, because we as CIOs and CDOs become consultants to our business, knowing what blend of what works, how and why in our company, what's ready for prime time, what fits the nature and the culture that we're actually leading in. So I think it's a more sophisticated role. I think it also needs to be able to recognize the capabilities which are truly ready for prime time. And so I love being the technologist now more than ever before, because I think the role of technology is more mission critical, more central to the business, and the business is more engaged. We've gone a long way beyond proving value propositions of individual investment programs. We are literally steering the business real time, and I think every board and every C-suite has to have technology representation if that organization is going to thrive in this new digital future that we're already in.
Cynthia, if you think back just a couple of years by way of comparison and now look at your own position, are you thinking differently about your role, your responsibilities, even your remit?
Absolutely. I would say that we're the heart of the organization, the heartbeat of the organization now. We keep the organization running. If you think about our roles, I mean, Andrew did a really great job of describing it. We're the horizontal eyes and ears of the organization. We see everything, and actually we power everything because it's all digital now. And what we need to do is make sure that we look at our employee experiences and leverage those, and make sure that they are having great experiences, and then also help with the customer journey experiences. And the same principles of employees apply to customers, and it's digital. We need to look at how we can apply technology, how we can look at business process and simplify. And again, since we are those horizontal eyes and ears, we need to bring that forefront to our business partners and be that consultant and help them solve what the issues are, so that the business can scale and be responsive. I think that it's really critical right now for CIOs to really prioritize any initiatives and any business processes that really help that end to end and help companies become more digital, more responsive and more agile.
So let me ask you then specific, Cynthia. A lot of businesses are now operating with this hybrid workplace model we've been talking about. What are you prioritizing for this current year?
Oh, wow. For the current year, I would say that, what the prioritization is right now is it continues in the digital workplace, in the next generation of what we're calling hybrid. We really need to keep looking at employee sense, purpose, productivity, and actually insights as well. So understanding from how people work and how we can make that experience better. It's much like, looking at a customer journey and saying we're going to make it better. Well, I think we need to look at the different aspects of the workplace, be it the workplace in a person's, home office or the hybrid world, and really look at how we can, use technologies to actually look at different areas where, people might collaborate, people might have some private time, and why do they need to come together? Andrew mentioned that, some of the, teamwork and coming together is lacking. Well, we need to figure out, what is actually needed, what is behind the coming together, and how do we enable that in order to make it stronger in the workplace or in the virtual workplace. So when I look at the priorities for this year, it's really around the next generation of the workplace, what it looks like, how we bring that to life, and how we help people adapt to the environments. Because it's not just giving them the tools; it's helping them, adapt to what is a new normal for everybody's life.
One of the great things for me about leading the Microsoft posture is that we get to experiment with the new capabilities very early. We call it dog fooding or being customer zero or enterprise proving things. So one of the things I'm very focused on this year is proving with our own adoption that the new capabilities coming in Teams and with things like Viva, which is all around a connected experience and building a broader digital backbone that employees can stay connected on in the way we're describing. So we get to see that early. And so AI is powering a lot of the new ways teams will behave. We're all very used to relatively two-dimensional gallery view and things like that. But now we know that we're going to see three-dimensional world, metaverse. We know we're going to see a lot to do with representation of ourselves as avatars. Then the physical cameras and audio systems that will exist when we are together in meeting rooms are getting cleverer and cleverer. But how do we make that experience level and easy and easily adoptable when some are in a meeting room, some are remote, it's changing all the time. We know that at the moment that's not brilliant. It will be better. And I think there's going to be a huge focus this year on how much we can get out, how quickly, that make the hybrid experience a richer one than I think it would be right now, and also as good as what we're used to when everybody is remote. The playing field will not be level anymore, and I think technology is going to change very, very rapidly. And we as orchestrators and leaders in our businesses are going to have to make sure we can get that there and then demonstrate what the right adoption is. So I'm excited about dog fooding as well, which we're already doing.
The different personas that we have as organizations collaborate differently. And I think it's going to be really important to look at those personas and how people work, and then bring that to life with the different technologies, because it's going to be very, very competitive, and people are going to demand a good experience, and we need to just get ahead of the game and be prepared with a hybrid experience that is actually great, and enriching, and brings people to life on innovation.
In fact, it has to be, as Cynthia I think is really articulating well, a huge differentiator, because the talent that you need to attract and retain to be a world-class business is going to grade the experience as a key part of why they're there in the first place. And so a great technology experience has to be table stakes.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at meeting, event effectiveness, is it technology enabler, or is it, a detractor? How do we bring teams together to innovate and whiteboard? And also we need to be prepared for the next big pandemic. Hopefully it won't occur, but if it does, we need to be able to package up work products and be able to take them and have them be, mobile and virtual. I mean, a dream for me is to remove whiteboards from every conference room so that people don't physically write on them, and actually capture all of that innovation, all of those ideas electronically, so they can be transported to any type of a workplace if we need to enable that in the future.
We might be conveying that hybrid working is the be all and end all of everything about this year. I don't think it is. I think there are several things emerging in the workplace alongside hybrid that will change the way and the nature of how things are done in an enterprise. And I think the democratization of code and the number of people that can build apps and do creative things with the new power platforms that exist, I think that's going to be a fundamental driver of change in the culture of company. I also think the democratization of data and how data and insight are going to be far more part of the central business dialogue. I think that we're going to see big changes in that during the course of the year as well. So there's lots of things happening that affect the way and the paradigm and the philosophy of work that are occurring alongside hybrid.
Yeah, Andrew, I totally agree. One of my taglines to my staff is that we want to take IT out of the equation. And they look at me and they're like, wow, you want to eliminate us? And it's no, we just don't want to be a blocker. What we want to do is enable our business people to be self-sufficient and do their jobs. It could be self-service data. It could be the low-code, no-code platforms where you automate business processes that Andrew, that you're talking about. It could be RPA, an RPA engine to help automate some mundane work, but they shouldn't have to wait in the IT line. What we should be able to do is to enable our business to be self-sufficient and to create and to innovate within their own business practices.
Something you both mentioned now is insight, gaining insight into the way that people are working. And of course, that can come from data. It might be anecdotal, it might be pure data, looking at length of time at a screen or whatever it might be. And of course, those new technologies you were talking about, Andrew, they're all throwing out huge amounts of new data as we see how people interact with one another digitally. How do you think, Andrew, that businesses can best use this phase, however long it lasts, where offices are not entirely filled, many are still working from home or following a hybrid model, to focus on improving employee and customer experiences through the power of data? And that's a very broad topic, I acknowledge.
We are going to be given a lot more capability as leaders, as managers, as employees, and as people who are trying to attract customers. Knowing what to do and how to do it and at what rate, and not being overwhelmed by it, I think is going to be a key behavioral thing that we'll have to operate as both individuals and as leaders. So this year, I can see the platforms getting cleverer and cleverer. I can see Viva telling us more about individual work practices, workforce pattern of behavior, who's doing what, where, how, when. Well, managers will get a very different view of their team than they've ever had before. Now, how is that done in a way that doesn't feel creepy as well? I think it's going to be quite key, actually, because we want this to be a positive experience at the same time as the workforce is getting used to being back, for those who have shifted away from physical locations. But of course, many workforces, never went away in the first place. So we've got a quite a broad set of constituents here who are all going to be seeing technology get cleverer. Back to that consultant and orchestrator, understanding what the platforms are doing, understanding the cultural acceptance of that, both in your organization and if you're global around the world in different regions, is going to be really key as well. A sense of appropriateness, a sense of sovereignty when it comes to data, a sense of appropriateness, and perhaps responsibility. We've mentioned AI several times. I think an organization needs to think carefully about what it assumes the services are doing and how responsible they are. So, Cynthia and I both work for organizations that need to think carefully about how responsible the AI in their capabilities and platforms are. But then where AI is being developed and honed and tuned within an organization, there's an ethical impliance there. There's a responsibility, which goes back to your point on, a very different role to the traditional technologies that we used to play. And I think that is all afoot here right now.
Cynthia, let me ask you then, at Adobe, we've talked about AI there. How are you using AI? How are you using machine learning to create change either for your team members or indeed your customers?
Oh, we are using it. I mean, if you talk about our customers, we have our marquee product, Adobe Sensei, which is really the magic, behind a lot of our creative products, in order to bring, images and everything to life. But we do also look at AI and ML internally, look at it, in order to look at our work. I mean, a simple example is, what I talked about before is bringing people together as a community and having them, figure out issues, work from home and how to use different tools. Well, there's patterns there. And we've been able to put bots using AI and ML onto those channels in order to, answer quicker, get the answers out there. So humans don't necessarily need to answer because we've built the intelligence using that. We've also done, the same, to help out our customer service agents. So we've put, to help with their interactions with our customers. So we've injected it there. And then when you think about our running our services and running the backbone of IT, we've actually used a lot of AI, ML, self-learning in order to create, event-driven automation, which looks at, hiccups in systems that are running and actually corrects them before they could become issues, or corrects them and, sends an alert to an engineering team that they need to address something for the long term. So, we've looked at it really pretty holistically, from the employee experience to the customer experience, how we run our operations, and then actually also how we run our back office operations by, injecting RPA and bots into contract management, into how we, do our purchase orders and things like that. So it's really used across Adobe in many different ways.
I think AI is really going to exist in every product and service we consume. Great examples like Cynthia is describing there. I think another one is where AI is helping the field teams that exist in Microsoft actually navigate the speed of all of this new that's coming along. How do we enable them to be successful with their customers by recommending what products and services should be deployed next, and how, using real intelligence and data on how a customer is consuming Microsoft in our case. So making our account teams very successful, knowledgeable on about a specific customer context with all of the new capabilities that we've been talking about today is going to be really powerful. And really key if we're going to help all of our customers with both the speed but also the breadth of services which are now available. So there's just another example of how AI is coming together. I think Viva, for those who are looking at Viva, that will be full of AI in terms of helping understand the nature of work and the nature of behavior as we go back, because most organizations will be experimenting along the way on that. So we really are going to have a lot of telemetry this year that's going to be quite exciting, will help us drive that new culture.
You talked there about experimenting, Andrew, and I want to ask both of you about the kind of internal tinkering and tweaking that your businesses are involved in. Cynthia, let me start with you. How are you guys at Adobe using next generation, let's call them that, working tools, working environments like Lab 82, the Garage? Talk to us about those.
Yeah. We love to actually, we meaning me and my team, we love to tinker and experiment with new technologies. And even before the pandemic, I talked about the workplace experience group in my team. What we created was what we call Lab 82, and we were able to bring new technologies into this physical lab and actually play around with them and see how people reacted. And people knew when they volunteered to actually, participate, that, they were being observed and things like that. And we learned so much. I mean, we learned that certain technologies that we would have, mass deployed within Adobe probably would never have been used. So we were able to cut our losses short. But, as we go forward, I would say that, we're looking really to, test out the more collaborative workplace technologies. Andrew talked about them in this garage concept that we have. And when I look at the garage, it's really looking at, different ways of looking at working. We have the community and the well-being component. We have our ways of working. We have the actual physical environment and the technology. And the garage really focuses on that technology and how do we create that, holistic, human-centered experience. And that's really what we're after with experimentation with, different cameras, different video devices. How do you create the avatars? What is that experience? How do we structure our physical conference rooms? How do we look at, workplaces and perhaps have, movable walls and technology that is electronic? So we are playing around with that to see, what is that next experience? And how do we help actually, work with people like Microsoft and others and help shape that from our knowledge and how we work as a company?
Andrew, what about you?
I think real-time innovation is a behavior that we'll all be getting used to on a permanent basis. So the garage that Cynthia described, we have the hive, which sounds interesting. It's the place where we do a lot of what I was talking earlier, where we bring the software and the hardware together to see what configurations and patterns work, even before we deploy within Microsoft. But I think every new work area that we activate and reimagine, I think is going to be configured for a different form of behavior and working. In a hybrid world, I believe a lot of the sort of normal conferencing will continue, and then the physical space of the offices will be where this creativity comes alive. And so we're thinking about that in terms of even location layout and building layout. And as we and others refresh our campuses, I think the intent and the purpose of space will change. And so I think we have to think about not just when and how, but also where innovation is going to take place. I think being able to meet in virtual reality and be able to make the human presence a very malleable and liquid thing is going to be really powerful as well. So we can meet informally and casually as well as through standard conferencing. But then, how is that going to work in practice? So we're going to discover a lot, I think, in the next few months.
One question I want to ask both of you just before I let you go, and I'll start with you, Cynthia. Is there a specific project in the year ahead or in the future you're looking at that's got you particularly excited?
I think what has me excited is our garage, our Lab 82 garage, because we're going to be able to experiment with different technologies to help bring the new way of working to life. And I think that's really very, very important. Understanding why people will want to come together, what type of collaboration, will be, in humans together, what type of creativity, that we need to enable. That is just very exciting. And thinking about how we can, eliminate the old physical ways of working even more and bring together more digital so that we can bring teams to life in many different ways is what excites me.
Andrew, your turn. Is there a single issue, a single initiative at Microsoft that's having that kind of enthusiasm driving effect on you as well?
I think, I would say sustainability actually, and not completely disconnected from what we've been talking about today. The sustainability posture of a company is going to be really important for several dimensions. One, because it's the right thing for the planet. Two, because our employee base looks to us to see what leadership and thought leadership position we take and how sustainable we are, whether it's carbon or water or any other dimensions of sustainability. I think we as technologists are going to have to help our organizations be able to plot our footprint and measure, but in a manner that is going to be increasingly, I suspect, driven by compliance and auditing, perhaps even to the extent of financial records, as we see with things like Sarbanes-Oxley. So I think sustainability is a big new area that is going to be really important for a company's brand, its operations, its relationships with its employees and customers, and the demands it places on technology to allow it to address all of those. So I'm really excited about that. I think there's going to be a lot of movement in the next 12 months.
Andrew, Cindy, I want to thank you both so much for your time today. Thanks also to those of you watching. Please do head back to the main stage now and enjoy the rest of the program.